I'm Constance. I'm Dean of Education with the Heartland Institute, and I am on, and several of the coaches are on. I know. Huh?
Well, we're trying to get up the
What? Hello? Yes, you said something? If you, you need to mute yourself, all right? But we'll get, I was a little confusing, but I have several of the coaches on. I know I saw Coach Mark, Coach Paul, Coach Janelle. I'm trying to think who else was on. But we are all here because of essays. All right, this is fall application season, and you guys, I appreciate you taking your Saturday morning to get on. We cannot how important the essays are. Essays reviews are part of our program, and last year we reviewed well over 2,300 essays. Okay, and you have college application essays, you have scholarship essays, and so if you're not a senior and you're thinking, this didn't really apply to me, you're wrong. If you're a freshman, sophomore, or junior, you need to be dealing with scholarships, okay? And so we're excited, and Coach Diane is on. All right. Coach Diane is not a morning person, but she made it. I'm proud of her. So let's get started. We have a guest today. His name is Zaharia, and he is one of our reviewers. Now, he's the one who has reviewed essays the longest. In addition to all the essays he's reviewed, he also reviews dissertations and theses. He reviews essays for internships and applications. All right. This is a big thing he does. He's an excellent writer, big tech writer. He's a professional engineer, and he has a few things to share about writing essays. It is not good enough to just write an essay anymore. You got to know how to do it. Competition is high getting into schools. All right. You just don't get in automatically anymore. And so you guys need to pay attention. In my mind, he's the best, all right? And he's going to share what he knows, his thoughts, and the whole bit. So, Zaharia, are you on?
I am on.
Oh, thank goodness. That would have been awkward. Woo, yay! All right. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. I tested it once, but I'm going to test it again to make sure that I'm sharing the screen well, because I never quite know. And let's see, share screen. Is everyone able to see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes, we are. We're good to go.
Okay. And people can see me?
Yes, we can. We're good to go.
So this is not the time to pick my nose.
No. And I will be watching the chat line. And other coaches who are on, you are better at essays than I am. If they give a hard essay, you need to chip in. Hard essay questions, someone else needs to take over, coaches. All right, go, Bob.
All right. So we are discussing how to write an essay and why it matters. And my name, as Constance introduced me, my name is Zaharia. I am a professional reviewer, and from what I understand, I'm quite good. Last year, the students reporting got, I believe, right around a total of $7 to $8 million worth of scholarships combined. All of them got into schools they applied for, and in addition, I've helped several grad students either get into grad school or work on their theses, dissertations, etc. And so That's my way to boost my ego a little bit. And today we're going to be discussing how to write a college essay and why it even matters. So, I like to give a brief overview on the presentation. We'll discuss what the essays are, why they matter, what to write, how to write, different traps that I typically see, and then for those who have prompts, we'll do some examples and do some work through some live applications, prompts, examples, whatever. And then I'll have some concluding thoughts, and we'll open up for additional questions throughout. And so let's get started. And if I start talking too quickly, let me know. Or if I'm too slow, too bad. So what are these essays? Most colleges require a college application essay. Most scholarships require an application essay, and most graduate schools require application essays. For those who are filling out the Common App, it's typically one or more prompts that will be sent to multiple schools, but those schools themselves may have supplemental questions that are unique to that specific college or university. Some applications will have multiple prompts, some may only have one. I've never seen one where you could apply without having to write at least something. So why do these matter? As one person pointed out, they matter because colleges read them, but they matter beyond that. Most people think that the key to getting into school is having perfect grades and perfect test scores. And that is important because it gets you past the initial selection. If a school only has 10,000 openings and they have 100,000 people apply, they need to cut those numbers down somehow. And so scores are an easy way to do that. But if you have too many applicants for the number of positions, then the university or the scholarship, that selection group has to find a way to differentiate and decide who wins, for lack of a better term. And that's where the essay becomes critical. It is not necessarily to share your accomplishments as much as it is to show who you are as a person and how you will do well within that school system or with that scholarship money. So I spent a lot of time and finally managed to break this down into this general essay idea into 3 sections, and it's for what you write. And I like to call it the Pugh Approach because I like lasers, you know, pew, pew, pew. But it's also a very easy acronym. The first part is the prompt and the fact that you have to answer it. The second part is that every good essay that I have ever read and reviewed shares some sort of experience that shows that answer. And then the final part is telling why that experience matters in the grander scheme. So the first part is answering the prompt. And what I like to do when I'm reviewing an essay, and what I advocate everyone do when they're writing an essay, is to highlight and identify the specific questions being asked. This is something that a lot of standardized tests will have issues with, and I've seen it with applications as well, where they will give the prompt and the question, and then they give a lot of fluff and unnecessary aspects as a supplemental. And so, for instance, there was a prompt on the Common application about sharing the world you come from and how it has influenced you. And then afterwards, they talk about how that world can be the neighborhood you grew up in, or your cultural background, your religious background, your family dynamics. All of those different details about what your world is are nice, but they are not the prompt. The prompt is asking, what is your world? What's your background? And how it has impacted you. And so then when you answer that prompt, you want to be very direct and concise. And so to do that, you want to be exactly that and say, my world is blank. It has impacted me blank. And so, for instance, let's say your family immigrated to the US, your parents. You can say that you are the son or daughter of a family that immigrated. That is your world. How did that impact you? And you want to list maybe 2 or 3 specific character traits that you have gained from that background. Maybe as a result of that, you learned to work harder, or you learned how to overcome adversity, or how to become a leader. Whatever it is, you want to list those very clear and concise details. The next part is show and tell. And I call it show and tell because most students in their first draft of the essay, they tell the reader what they think or what they want the reader to know. And so it'd be like saying, I am a leader. And the problem is you need to show the reader that you're a leader. I could tell you I'm an astronaut right now. And unless you do some background research, which most readers won't necessarily do, you can't really prove me wrong. You can't prove me right either. I could tell you that I'm the best leader in the world. But unless I show you some sort of experience, some sort of example, you do not have any sort of evidence, or rather, I don't have any evidence to prove that. And so when you're writing your essays, you want that experience, you want those examples to help prove whatever you're claiming about yourself. When you're sharing these details, you want to look at information that is not easily found. If you are the student body president for your high school class, and you were student body president for 3 years, you can say that makes you a good leader. You can also say, the person reading your essay can also see that in other parts of your application. If you won some big award, that's great. But that's something that the reader will already know from the other part of your application. And so you want to share something that you may not necessarily find. For example, I love pro wrestling. It's funny, it's dumb. I get it. I know it's fake, but I love pro wrestling. Why do I love pro wrestling? Because it provided a way for me to bond with my father. It taught me lessons about good versus bad, and it showed these larger-than-life characters and grandeur for me to aspire to. Now, what I just did is I shared something that would never be on an application. And then I applied it to greater ideals. You have that family kinship and bonding. You have that understanding of good and bad, and you have that idealism towards something greater. Again, not on the application, but very valuable personal background. If you're not sure what to share, or if the best answer to a prompt is from your application, then you need your examples to go into depth, all right? As Constance mentioned, I am a professional engineer. Now, if I just said I had a great achievement by earning my engineering license, that's great. That would be on the application anyway. If I start sharing about how I studied for the engineering test while helping my wife with our newborn son and managing my job, and I share that struggle, suddenly that achievement becomes that much more important, because the reader sees that, yes, I got the engineering degree or the engineering license, but there was that background behind it. There's all of that personal experience behind it. And so let's say someone is a valedictorian in high school, and to do so, you had to ace all of your classes in AP, Chem, and US History, and all those different courses. And you had to do all this extracurricular activity, and you were doing all of this to become valedictorian. You want to share those experiences. You want to share how that impacted your personality, your character type. And suddenly, all of those achievements that are in the application have deeper meaning because they have the story behind it. So, following our pew, 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 we've answered the prompt and we've shared an experience, but what's the purpose? Why are we writing an application? And this is another issue that a lot of students face, is you want to know, you need to remind the reader that this experience you've had is important for attending the school or getting the scholarship. You want to convey that having overcome adversity, you know you'll be able to overcome any tribulations you experience in earning your degree. Or you want to say that you've worked so hard to get to college, and by earning a scholarship, you will have a greater opportunity to further your development. However you choose to connect it, you want to directly reference that you are seeking admission or seeking a an award for the scholarship or whatever that end game is. Now, part of this is you need to research your end game beyond just the marketing materials. And this is in many ways specific to the prompt itself or to the organization you're applying to. And so if you're applying to a school and they have a why us prompt, it's very popular. You want to be very specific as to why you're choosing that school. If you're applying for a scholarship, you want to be specific about why you're applying for that scholarship. An example would be if you're applying from an organization or for a scholarship from an organization that is focused on environmental sustainability, you would want to discuss how your education and how the money they are paying you would be used to help further the ideals of that organization. If you're dealing with, say, the Common App, where you cannot personalize it to any one particular school, then you want to discuss your degree and your career choice. And you can discuss why you are looking at whichever specific background you are looking at. For instance, if you want to go into business economics, you can discuss why that specific area of business as opposed to marketing or whatever else. If you're going into a specific science field or math field, you can discuss why that specific program matters to you. Now, we've discussed quite a bit so far already, but if we know that we need to follow the pew, pew, pew method, then how do we actually write a good essay? And that's really why everyone's here, right? I mean, everyone can write. It's just a matter of how do you make it not bad. And so you'll notice that there are two parts here. One is micro messaging and one is the outline. The outline will follow much of the Pugh method. The micro messaging is something that we need to keep in our minds, and it is arguably the greatest tool that you have in writing. And I like to call it writing between the lines, because you can't really read between the lines or anything like that, but you can write that way. So, and saw some friends of mine, and I was actually discussing this exact concept. And we were at our favorite Mexican. I saw my camera blip. I don't know if that was me or not. But, and if I disconnect, someone let me know so I don't keep rambling on. But I was talking with my friend and discussing this concept. We were at a Mexican restaurant, and they got a sopapilla sundae. And if you haven't had one, it is delicious. It's a fried tortilla with ice cream and chocolate and peanuts and cherries and happiness. It is happiness in a bowl. And she still wasn't understanding micromessaging. And I said, all right, here's an example. Let's say I ask, are you going to eat that next bite of ice cream? And she said, yes, of course I am. I said, good, good, good. And I said, now, imagine how you would feel if I said, you're not going to eat that next bite, are you? In that one sentence, that one example, the first one I asked, are you going to eat? In the second one, I sent the message, you are not going to eat that. And then I asked. And I asked my friend her response, and she said, well, the first one you asked a question, and in the second one you called me fat. And I then spent an hour explaining to my friend that I did not think she was fat, that I thought she was very healthy, and that she should enjoy the ice cream. But just in the way I presented that question, it was interpreted incredibly differently. And so when we're in person and when we're speaking, it's a little easier to do. For instance, right now, I'm actually hunched kind of forward. Let's see if I can show you. This is how I'm sitting, all right? Kind of hunched forward. I'm very excited about the subject material, all right? If I were standing with my, kind of leaned back with my arms crossed in front of me, I'm closing myself off. I'm showing that I'm not receptive to what we're talking about. That's easy to convey in person. It's harder to do when we're writing. And so the reason why I mention micromessaging is not because it's something that we can necessarily implement easily, but it's something that we need to be very aware of. And so how do we do it? And, how do we work with it within the essay itself? Again, we cannot convey body language. We cannot use our hands to talk or use our facial expressions to try and convey emphasis. But there are alternatives. Certain words have a positive connotation. Some of them have a negative connotation. We can write sentences and present questions very positively, or we can present them very negatively and try to elicit that type of almost subconscious response. If we're not sure about a micromessage, or if we are afraid of a micromessage, then we can try to eliminate it. And the easiest way to do that is by removing ambiguity. And the reason why I say that is an inherent quality of micromessaging is that we are looking at how our message is received. And so I can send whatever message I want. I could say, you're the greatest person in the world. But if I say it in a way that it is received poorly, someone else's background may take it as a criticism. And this is something that I struggled with. I had a professor who I just thought he was a jerk. Even now, I kind of hate the guy. And he gave me a compliment once. First time in an entire semester, it was near the end of the semester, he gave me a compliment, and I took it as criticism because that was my background response to it. So how do we deal with that if we want to say something, but the reader may have a negative background? We take out the ambiguity. And so an example of ambiguous language is red versus blush. And my wife likes this one. She once took me to a makeup aisle and said, look at all these types of lipstick. I said, all right. She said, would you say they're all the same color? I said, no, they're different shades of red. And she said, most guys would just say they're red. I said, well, they're all red. It's just a different shade. And she then pointed to one and said, no, this is cherry blossom. Pointed to another, this is blush. Pointed to another, this is Merlot. And for a second, I thought we were on the wine aisle. And so, but having that level of detail helps to remove some of the interpretation. And so if I said the sky is blue, you may think, I guarantee if I said right now the sky is blue, every single person would have a different shade of blue in mind. Even if they're similar, it's a different shade. And so by describing the blue, either attributing a positive or negative emotion, a bright sunny blue or a deep dark blue, you can have a different response. Or you can say it was baby blue, or baby blue with a hint of, I don't know, broken dreams. I don't know. But using those extra descriptors can help to remove any sort of ambiguity, which then reduces the chance of a micro message being inferred poorly. As a side note to this, every essay I've read always says, if I get into Harvard, or if I get this scholarship, or if I do this, or if I do that. I do not like the word if. I don't think anyone should ever really use the word if in an essay, because the word if suggests that it may not happen. And what I mean by that is, if I get this scholarship, I will be able to go to my dream school. Well, what if you don't? If I go to NYU, I will achieve this dream. Well, what if you don't? Rather than open up the door to say that you may not get in or you may not get the scholarship, I like to use wording that suggests that you already are. As a student at Columbia University, as a student at UCLA, as a recipient of this scholarship. In doing so, it seems very much like a nitpicky kind of small detail thing, but in doing so, you are sending the message that you are already that type of student. You have already earned that scholarship. You're simply letting the reader know what you're going to do having done so, if that makes sense. All right. So, outlines. I will tell you, I hate outlines. I have always hated outlines, and in high school, I thought they were the dumbest thing in the world. I thought they were a pain in the butt. They took me an hour to do, and at the end of the day, I always got a bad grade on them because I never put any effort into them. And being on the other side, I can tell every student that outlines and thinks about what they're writing, and I can tell every student that ignores it and just jumps right in. When you're doing your outline, you want to have the same Pugh approach. Answer the prompt, discuss an experience, and discuss why it matters. To help with this, I thought I would give you the structure of what I consider to be a good essay. And when I say structure or approach or outline, I'm using them fairly synonymously because the structure of an essay should be the same as the outline, which should be the general approach. And so the first thing you do is you'll start with a hook, and I'll discuss a lot of these as we go. You'll have a hook to grab the reader's attention. You'll share your experience, whatever it is that shows your answer. You'll have the lesson from that experience. So this is how the experience relates to the prompt. You'll discuss your outcome, and then you'll have some sort of conclusion to finish everything up and bring it all together. So, what is the hook? It grabs your attention. It can be a very vivid image. It could be something that's very shocking. It could be something that is hilarious, or something that simply piques curiosity, makes someone want to know what's happening. With humor, you should be cautious because a lot of people, humor is very subjective. And so what you may think is a joke and the funniest thing in the world, someone else may not understand. With being shocking, you also do not want to be so shocking that it crosses into being offensive. And a lot of this is going to be difficult to know where that line is, and that's where getting someone else to read the essay will help. An example of piquing curiosity, I reviewed an essay from a student, and they started their essay saying, double mint gum. That was it, just double mint gum. First sentence, done. And they even put a line break after that. It was double mint gum, break, essay. And the first thing I thought was, well, I want to know why gum is so important. It's tasty, but I wanted to know why. And so that is the general concept behind it, is you're trying to get that attention. Any student in the world can say, I should go to such and such school because I do this, that, and the other. That's great. Every student can say that. By starting something very unique, very personal, you are able to grab the attention quicker. This then allows to discuss the experience. And in many good essays, the hook will be part of that experience. And so it's the same experience that we discussed previously, but you want to share details. You want to share your thoughts, your emotions, your conversations. You want to be very vivid in the imagery. If I said that I cooked a grilled cheese sandwich, everyone has an idea of a grilled cheese sandwich. If I say the golden toasted crust captured the gooey, cheesy goodness that would be my sandwich, suddenly you have a very different image of the sandwich that we were talking about. That imagery will help to better impress upon the reader's memory. All of those vivid details will help with memory. What happens is, as you get detailed, as you share thoughts, as you share emotions, you enable the reader to relive and experience whatever it is you experienced, whether it's good, whether it's bad. As the reader experiences that more, they develop empathy. If they are empathetic, they will remember it more. And if they remember it more, then you have the edge over someone else. Because in the end, these readers will go through thousands upon thousands of essays. And so you want to be the one that sticks out. You want to be the one that changes someone's life. I reviewed a scholarship essay. It was arguably one of the best essays I've ever read. I had one change in punctuation. And the students started by talking about an interaction they had in school. And by the end of that experience, they had shared how they had felt diminished for their economic status. And it tugged at my heart. I was like, oh, just shut up and take my money. And I don't have the money to give. And I wanted to give this kid a scholarship. And it sticks in my mind because they were very vivid and very explicit in sharing dialogue, in sharing their emotions and their thoughts throughout. And so you want to try to elicit that same type of response. What did you learn from the experience? All right, this is where you connect it to the prompt. The student was going for a scholarship, and so he talked about his financial hardships and how he wanted to pursue his degree to help others who were in his similar position. And in doing so, he referenced how the scholarship would help him to earn his degree. In another example, you can look at the Common App and overcoming adversity and the lessons learned. And you can tell about how you were working on a competition and how at the last minute, everything just broke down. Everything was going wrong. And you can build up this story about how hard it was, and then you can talk about how you were the savior and you fixed everything and you won the competition, and in doing so you learned whatever it is. You learned to be a leader or how to persevere. That leadership, that perseverance is the moral of your story. That is who you are. And even if you do not succeed, even if you experience a failure, and some essays ask about failures, you can share what you learned from that failure. And then again, you'll connect it to what you want. Do you want to attend a specific school, get a scholarship, reminding the reader why you're writing. And so following the competition, you can say, I learned to persevere and I learned to become this great leader. And then you can say, in attending college to get a degree in whatever, I will continue to use this leadership experience so that I can be effective in whichever career. Or in earning this scholarship, I will be able to further develop my skills in perseverance or whatever to earn a degree in whichever major you choose. No matter what, though, you want to connect back to that purpose for the essay. And then the last part is the conclusion. I recently read an essay that was incredibly depressing. And by the end of it, the general message was that life was pointless and full of hardship before you die. Don't do that because it's depressing. If anyone has seen the movie Old Yeller, it's an old movie. I am about to give a spoiler. And so this is your 5-second warning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The dog dies at the end. And it is sad. All right. People weep in that movie. And no one wants to finish an essay feeling like life is hopeless. Schools want to know that you are optimistic. They want to know that you believe in your heart of hearts that you will change the world, even if it's just for a few people. If you're applying for med school, you need to write and you want to finish as though you are going to cure cancer. If you're writing to be an accountant, you want to write as though you are going to help thousands or millions of people to better manage their money and have a happier life. This is your chance to be idealistic with your pursuits and be inspirational. Because remember, schools get a lot of recognition based on successful alumni. They get to brag if you go on to lead a prosperous career as a lawyer or as the person who does cure cancer or as the person who does earn some sort of award in accounting or in management or in science or in writing. These schools get a huge ego bump from you being successful. So you want to leave them with the idea that you are going to be successful and you will have an impact. This is where we start to get into traps. A lot of essays fall victim to a lot of issues, and a lot of them are addressed by the approach that I suggested, the Pew, Pew, Pew. That's where you highlight the issue of not answering the whole prompt. That's why you highlight the specific questions. I've read plenty of essays where they share a tremendous success, or they share their background, or they share whatever to answer that first part, but they don't share how they solved the problem or how that background influenced their life, or how that challenge changed their ability to approach life or do anything like that. The second is they fail to show the reader. They say, I should go to such and such school because I'm a leader, and they don't include that experience. That's why experience is the second thing I mention after answering the question. Connecting the experience to the outcome. Again, that's part of the why it matters. And if you follow the approach I suggested, even if your first draft is not the perfect draft, you'll avoid these first three issues. The fourth issue is failure to research your audience. And I touched on this earlier. If you're applying to a school and it's an application for a specific school, you want to research why that is the best school for you. A lot of students have it in their mind that they should apply to the Ivy League schools. And there is nothing wrong with that. If you go to Ivy League, good, yeah. But you need to be applying to the Ivy League for the right reasons. And Ivy League knows they're Ivy League. They're that good for a reason, and they know it. And you can tell that they're that good for a reason and that they know it because they have a stupid number of applicants. And then of those applicants, they have a ridiculously low admissions rate because they have so many students applying and so few spots to fill. Ivy League understands that they're Ivy League. Top-ranked schools in any major, anywhere, doing anything, know that they are the top rank. It is part of their bragging rights. They don't need you to tell them that they are the best. They know they're the best. What they want to know is how their being the best will suit you. Beyond just, oh, well, I'll be in the alumni network and, everyone respects Yale or Duke or whatever. And so research your school. If you want to apply to MIT for engineering, discuss the specific program in MIT. Discuss the specific classes you want to take in that program. If you're wanting to apply for, a history degree in a school that's top ranked for history, you would discuss that program. What does that program offer? Are there specific classes? No matter what program you're applying for, you want to discuss why it's important. What makes that different than any other school? Okay? Some of them, it may be that they have extracurricular opportunities. If it's a research university and you're going into a research program, STEM, then discuss those research projects, specific projects. If it's that you have student organizations you want to partake in, discuss them. If you're wanting to go into politics, you can discuss the political opportunities that come from the student organizations at whichever school. But you want to be specific. In doing so, you are showing the school that you care about their program and what they offer beyond name recognition. As part of this, do not say you want to go to a school because of where it's located. If you say that, and that may be part of it, say that at the end. I read a lot of essays where students say, I want to go to NYU because I will be in the heart of New York City. And that is dumb. If you want to live in New York City, move to New York. If you want to go to UCLA because you'll be in LA, just move to LA. Where a school is located should not influence nearly as much as what the school offers. And if you list the location first, you are inadvertently telling the school that you care about the location most. And so always save that for the end. And then the final part, and that's the part that we're going to dig deeper in now, is poor writing. And so we're going to discuss a few issues that come across with writing, and ones that I hope everyone, for the love of God, everyone looks at. First of all are acronyms. OMG, GTFO, LOL. Don't do it. Don't. If you use texting lingo, stop. All right? If I see an essay that has any of those acronyms, I send it back and I don't read anymore because I don't understand what it means. All right? I knew someone who had a death in the family, and they signed every email notifying their loved ones that, you know, grandpappy died, and they signed it LOL, thinking that meant lots of love. Do you have any idea how bad it was for them that they said, hi, my father died, LOL? People thought they were joking, and they were organizing a funeral. Don't do it. You have to assume that the reader does not know what GTFO means. Plus, GTFO, the F stands for the F word. That's profanity. Don't do that either. If you have an acronym, for instance, let's say you went to a summer camp and the camp has an acronym, or you're working with an organization with an acronym, at least write out the full name first. That way the reader will know what it means. If I say USDA, most people don't know what USDA stands for. If I say the United States Department of Agriculture, and then put in parentheses USDA, suddenly the reader will always know that USDA is referencing the Department of Agriculture. The next part, and very closely related to this, is grammar. I can tell anytime someone writes their essay on their phone. And I get it. Phones are convenient. Tablets are convenient. Chromebooks are convenient. They are. I love them. I do everything on my phone. And I know tons of students who write their essay on their phone, save it to the cloud, and then they edit on their computer. The problem is that texting and writing on phones increases the chance of texting lingo. And one of the greatest telltale signs of this is when someone writes the word through and spells it THRU instead of THRUGH. Again, if I can tell that you wrote it on your phone, then I stop reading it, because that means you did not take the time to at least read what you wrote before you sent it on. When it comes to writing these essays, you have to have proper grammar, because otherwise the person reading it will think that you did not have enough interest to put in the work to make the edits. This then leads into the next part, which is formality. And damn, it's unfortunate. When you're writing, do not use profanity. I read a great essay where the students started off their essay saying, damn. And I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was hilarious and totally on point. I told the student to take it out, because while I thought it was great, and I am not opposed to profane language, a lot of people are. And if you get a reader, who does not appreciate any sort of language like that, then you have suddenly put a negative association to your essay. It is unfortunate that this is the case, but most people cannot ignore that initial gut reaction. And so you do not want, it's less about, in this case, it's less about having the right thing written and more about making sure you do not have the wrong thing written. The next part of this is getting into extremes. Extremes are very, very rarely appropriate in an essay, and here's the reason why. If I say Rocky Road ice cream is the best ice cream in the world, some of you may agree with me, some of you may not. If you disagree, then suddenly in your mind, you are questioning my decisions. You are questioning my opinions and my background, because why would I say that the best ice cream is something that you don't like? The best, the most, the worst, all it takes is for one exception, and the reader can nullify your entire argument. Now, you can get around this by saying one of the best, or one of the most, or one of the worst. That way you're acknowledging it's not the worst, but it's one of them. And so it still conveys the severity of whatever you're discussing, but it does so in a way that allows for other opinions. The next one is attitude. Some students are very confident and want to portray confidence, and that is a good thing. You should be very confident in your ability. You also need to acknowledge that you are applying for a school so that you can get better. I read an essay where the student wrote at length about how they already embodied every aspect of their degree and of their career profession. So much so that I asked them why they were even bothering to apply. If they were that good, then they did not need to go to college. It's one thing to be confident, it's another thing to be cocky. And so you can say that you have the drive and the determination. You can say that you strive to embody certain aspects of whatever career you're seeking or whatever degree you're seeking. It's another to say that you are already there. That's something to just be aware of. Related to attitude is a sense of desperation. Anytime someone says, I truly care about people, or I truly believe something, I think you are truly trying to convince me. And if you are truly trying to convince me, you truly don't know if it's true. If you believe something, if you embody something, just say that you do. By not trying to convince someone and presenting the confidence, going back to that previous attitude thing, if you present the confidence that you are a leader, not that you truly believe yourself a leader, or that you have learned, not that you truly believe you have learned, you will have a much stronger essay. Attached to this is the concept of begging. And I like to say that begging is unbecoming, which is a little bit of a glib remark, but a lot of people, and this tends to be more for scholarship applications than college applications, a lot of people will start talking about how desperately they need the money. And you may be desperate for the money. I'm desperate for the money. Heck, if I could get all the money that people have gotten in scholarships, I'd be a very, very happy man right now. At the same time, you want to convey a sense of pride that you do not need the money. You don't want to say, give me a scholarship because I'm poor. You want to say, give me a scholarship because with it, I will do X, Y, and Z. If you look, for example, a way to look at it is, if I know someone is needing a few bucks, I am very happy to give them a 5 or a 10 or, whatever is reasonable. If someone comes up and is panhandling, begging for money, I'm far less likely to award it. Yes, desperation conveys a need, but you want to convey a sense of pride and confidence in yourself. People awarding scholarships want to know that the money is going to something very good and very positive. And in conveying that you will use it in that way, even if you do need the money, you are not focusing on what you lack, but what you can do with what you have. The next part is complexity. A lot of people try to sound smart, and they think, well, I'm applying to college, I need to sound like I'm a college student, and don't. And here's the reason why. Most people, in trying to sound smart, come across very complicated. And if you have ever read a sentence that lasts for 4 or 5 lines, it's very hard to follow. An example would be if you hear someone talking and they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and then they talk about this and then they talk about that, and then they don't hardly take a breath, and you're trying to process all this information and they're breathing really hard. It's hard to understand. It's just too much to take in. By using shorter sentences, simpler sentences, you are allowing the reader time to process what they are reading. If you are having an issue with length, you can combine and create compound sentences at the end. But especially for that first draft, you're better off using a lot of simple sentences and making sure that the message is received before trying to make things more, before combining things to make it a bit more complex. And then item 8 is details. And I cannot hammer this enough. I've discussed it several times with the experiences and with researching programs. Everything comes down to details. If you say that you are excited for the student organizations at ABC College, that's great. If you tell me what the specific organizations are that you're interested in, I suddenly know what type of person you are or what your interests are. You become more than just, I like to do things. You become someone who likes to do specific things. And if you happen to have a reader that can relate to you, then that will help. Let's say I say, I would like to participate in intramural sports. That's great. Let's say I say, or let's start at the beginning. I would like to do student organizations. Doesn't tell you much. If I say I want to do intramural sports, that tells you that I'm athletic. If I tell you I want to do intramural soccer, suddenly you know that I am a soccer player. And that is easier to remember than someone who just wants to do something. So, what do we do now? Well, this is the approach I'm going to suggest people take. Before I discussed the general approaches and the outlines and the problems, but I've thrown a lot of information at you, and it's probably good to try to consolidate some of this a little bit. So these are the specific steps I would take if I am writing an essay. or dealing with an application in general. 1, select your prompt. In some cases, this is done for you by the application itself. In cases of the Common App, you may have the opportunity to choose any one of 8 or however many total prompts they offer. Once you pick the prompt, so identify those questions. Once you've identified the questions, directly answer them. After you have answered the questions, decide what experiences show that answer. Once you pick your experience, tell the story. A lot of people think they have to write something great. Just tell the story. Tell it as though you were telling a complete stranger. Give enough detail as though you were telling a complete stranger, but make it as personal as though you were telling your best friend. And then as you do this, talk about how this relates to that prompt. And then after you share that experience and draw those connections, state how this relates to your overall goal, whether it's attending school, getting paid, or anything else. And so with that, we actually have a small break in the action. And I'm gonna, hey, there's the chat again. This is a chance to discuss, oh, people were asking me to slow down. I didn't have the chat up. I couldn't figure out how to get it up. And so, but this is a chance to go through questions and examples and everything.
Zaharia, we have been responding to the chat line.
Huh?
So you were caught up.
Okay.
Yes, you are caught up. The big question seems to be one, level of complexity. All right. You said you don't need to go overboard and go super big words and all of that, and keep it kind of simple. All right. And but you don't want to go, you want the balance. And the other question people are wondering is, if you give all these details, how are you going to hit your word limit?
Okay. So I'll take both in order. With complexity, and I've got a fantastic image in my head, and I don't know how to convey it. Hey, can y'all see my mouse kind of moving on the screen?
Yes.
Oh, good. So I'm going to try to do this in real time, and we're going to see if it works. Oh, that's all right. A, comma, B, comma, C. All right. Gosh, that is terrible. Terrible. That didn't work either. So in general, I do not recommend sentences having more than 3 parts. And typically those 3 parts should all be related. When initially writing an essay, it's always better to use less than more. And so you can say, I like sports. That would be 1 part. I like baseball. That is 1 part. I do not like basketball. That is 1 part. And I would much rather see someone write those 3 sentences than try to write everything all at once plus more. I see a whole lot of yeses, probably to the slow down part. And so what I would normally do is say, oh, can people see my mouse? Okay. You can tell how many times I actually do this part. So what I would normally do is, if this is all if each of these is a one-part sentence, a two-part sentence would be, I like sports, comma, particularly baseball. The first part is I like sports. The second part is conveying that you like baseball. An alternative would be, I like sports, but not basketball. Again, part A is you like sports. Part B, you do not like basketball. In order to get to a three-part sentence, you could say, while I like sports, such as baseball, I do not like basketball. And so these are what I would consider the 3 levels of complexity. I don't know how to make this easier if this is easy enough to see for everybody. There we go. So you have these 3 are all one-part sentences. These are two-part sentences. And then this is a 3-part sentence. I'm seeing questions about semicolons, dashes, howevers, and therefores. Semicolons and dashes are good for connecting sentences. Dashes can be used in lieu of the commas. And there are certain nuances to why you would use one versus the other. A lot of it is dependent on how much you are trying to interrupt the flow of the essay. Dashes tend to be more if you're trying to send a message directly to the reader outside of context or outside of the context of the total essay. And that's something that we could discuss further a little bit later, because it gets a little bit heavy and a little bit harder to elaborate on. You can use a dash to connect 2 complete sentences. You can use a semicolon to connect 2 complete sentences. If you do, you want the sentences to be related. And so an example would be like this. With a semicolon, 2 sentences connected is not considered to be too much of a run-on, provided that the sentence on either side only has those 2 or 3 parts. No more than 3, never more than 3. As far as when to connect 2 simple ones, a lot of it will be if the two parts feel or seem easy to connect. A lot of time, and I say that because a lot of times when it becomes a run-on sentence, they I don't know when this ends. Oh, I think we've got another file. With the run-on sentences, if you get more than 3 parts, typically the parts start to diverge. And you'll be able to see where 2 parts are closely related and 2 parts are not. Or 2 parts are very closely related and the third is not. In this example, I like sports and I like baseball are closely related because you're sharing things you like. I do not like basketball would be that third part, which is different. And so that is, a lot of it takes some time to get experience, but that's also a good, I guess, quick and dirty, for lack of a better term, quick and dirty. As for howevers and therefores, those are fantastic transitions and you can always use them if you use them properly. And this is something that I get, I always focus on. I'm going to delete this part if that works, or I can just set up a different thing. The with howevers and therefores, let me see if I can lower this stuff. However should always be sandwiched between a comma and a comma, or with a semicolon. However. And so the semicolon is if, would be like, I like sports, semicolon. However, I do not like basketball. If that makes sense. Therefore is very similar to however, but to my knowledge, it does not require having both the 2 commas or semicolon comma. And then there was a question somewhere about where to cut, and any questions I miss, if Con or any of the coaches can send them, I'm happy to address them further as we go.
Hey, Zach, there's one that I think is a pretty good question. RS asks, how should I tackle questions like, what are your weaknesses?
That is a fantastic little trick because the best way is to, there are 2 different approaches. One is to use the false weakness approach. This is what a lot of people use and do. They say, my weakness is that I work too hard, or that I don't quit. And you're saying it's a weakness because if you don't quit, even when you know you should, it's something stubborn. But in reality, schools like to know that even when you're dealing with adversity, you will keep going. And so I call it the false weakness. The other approach, which is less common, but may not be as easy to execute, is to list a legitimate weakness and then discuss how you've addressed it. And the reason why this one is very, very useful is because almost everyone uses the false weakness. And if executed right, it's very useful. Using the real weakness and discussing how you work around it and work with it shows a deeper level of self-knowledge. And if you include ways that you will continue to improve and strengthen that weakness in college, it can be extremely powerful. I say that it's difficult to execute because, one, a lot of people don't like to look at their weaknesses. And two, a lot of people do not necessarily work to fix them or know how to fix them or work to figure out how they can fix them in college. The false weakness is very common, but if executed well, incredibly effective. The legitimate weakness and self-improvement is far less common and much harder to execute, but could be extraordinarily powerful. I don't know if I've missed any others.
You're good.
Yeah, I think you're caught up. You're caught up.
You're good. What about the word limit?
Word limits. So I always want people to ignore the word limit in the beginning, because what ends up happening is if you're so obsessed with being less than 650 words or less than 300 words or less than however many characters, then what ends up happening is most students leave out those critical details. They say they want to be part of student organizations, and they do not discuss what organizations. And I realized I started speaking quickly because I got very, very passionate. And so I apologize for that part. In the first draft, always ignore the word limit. If you are using Heartland for your reviews, that's what I'm here for, and that's what the other reviewers are for. We help with meeting that limit at the end. And I always say at the end because I would want, I always want to see the full story. And once you know the full story, it's much easier as a reviewer. Once I know the full story, it's much easier for me to see which details are more important than others. And for instance, if you're describing an issue with your friend and you just spend several sentences discussing your friend's hair color, that may be relevant, but it may not. And so at the end, if you have too much, it's always easier to cut back.
Zaharia, I have a question on that. There probably should be some sort of a limit, though, shouldn't there? In other words, like if the word limit is 650 words, you're not going to want a 2,000-word essay. Is that correct?
That is correct. Keep in mind, we have lives, and we don't read books because people don't read books in this day and age. Little bit of humor there.
Zaharia?
Yeah?
Our general rule is student must be within 30, maybe 40% of the word limit. That is the most they can go over before I will forward the essay to a reviewer.
That's a good rule of thumb. Because I've had students who the word limit is 300 and they send 1,000-word essay. And
right. On that one, I would not send anything over 500 words.
Exactly. And that's also part of where the outlining approach comes in, because if you do a very thorough outline, nothing says you cannot write that much. You could have a 300-word essay and write 1,000 words, but I would then urge you to go back and look at your outline, look at what you're trying to answer, and see which sentences don't really help with that, and bring it back down a little bit. The rest of the slideshow is, I can go ahead and pop it up. It's a quick conclusion to say that the application essays are critical, and that the way we convey our information can impact how it's received. And while I've given a formula that helps with writing and personalizing these essays, a formula is always a formula. In order to make it yours, you have to add your own twist to it and your own voice and your own styles. And when you have any sort of doubts, you should always reach out for help. And I say ideally from a professional reviewer. If you are sharing an experience and you are talking to your friends or your family, they love you, all right? Your parents hopefully just adore you and want you to be happy and would hate to break your heart. I don't hate you, but I don't know you. And so I don't have any inclination to avoid honesty, if that makes sense. A lot of people will go to their professors, their teachers for help, and I suggest caution with that, because a lot of teachers read essays for school and classes, and the way I would write an essay for a history class or an English literature course is very different than how I would write for a college application. And so I'm not saying do not use your teachers as a resource, but be cautious of it. And the final part is not to have too many reviewers. If you have 10 different people look at your essay, 1, you'll have 10 different opinions. 2, you may have opinions that contradict each other. And 3, too many people editing your essay may change the entire voice of that essay. And that was it.
All right. Nice job. Nice job.
Hey, Con, can I?
Yeah.
I just wanted to drop one more in, if you guys can hear me. When students are writing essays to get into a particular university, what I always have them do is pull up the mission statement from the university and then creatively weave those things into their essay. You know, don't just point blank repeat it, but get creative and, you know, make sure that you include those buzzwords from the college mission statements, because they all have one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's part of that deeper research. And it's such a great way to do it, because especially if you don't directly reference it, but discuss it intuitively or indirectly, it creates that subconscious link of, wow, this student, they are right in line with our ideals. And the reader has no idea that you just tricked them.
Exactly. But it's very effective. And that's when the reviewers don't do the first draft and turn it in. Make sure you let the reviewers see that. And if you do that, give the reviewer that mission statement. Just plop it in there so they can understand, why you said that, or maybe help, wordsmith it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Zahari and Con, this is William, and I'd like to build on what Diane said, and that's that if you go to the particular department the student's interested in, they will have, again, a mission statement, usually specifically to that department. And so, again, if you weave that in too, as Zaharia said, and do it on an intuitive basis, then they'll really be ready.
Absolutely.
All right. Coaches, any other comments? Are we good?
No, I just wanted to let Zaharia know that you're getting a bunch of applause and thank yous in the chat. So,
yeah.
Yay.
All right. Okay, couple things from me. One, excellent webinar. Excellent. I can't say enough good things. Two, we had some office that did some hosting, which is so exciting. If a student or you know someone who is not part of our program, and you're interested, you need to talk to the consultant or whoever invited you to their office if you want to join the program and get your own coach. What we do is we help with essays, the application process. Before we do any of that, we help with figuring out majors and colleges, where to apply, and of course we do the financial aid, scholarships, and all of that. You need to know that probably that first week or so in October, we will be running a FAFSA workshop. And you need to be on because we're going to talk about FAFSA. Seniors, do not fill out FAFSA until October 1. If you do it prior to October 1, you're going to have the wrong FAFSA. And like I said, if you want to join our program, talk to whoever is at the office. I'm going to give my email address in case anyone ends up having a question or anything. I'm at constance@hive-usa.org. More than willing to help you out. If you're in the program and you have questions, get hold of your coach. I know the coaches would love to hear from some of you guys because you haven't checked in lately. We need to find out what's going on. And that's it. Any final questions? Are we good? I'm calling us good. You guys have a great rest of the weekend. Zaharia, great job. Coaches, thanks for getting on. And students, you need to be writing those essays. We do not wait till November, all right? All of us want to take off for Thanksgiving, okay? And for those of you in California, you have big due dates, November 30th and December 1. So get them in now. Get them in now. That's it. You guys have a good one. Zaharia, you will need to end the meeting for us. Thank you.
I will end the meeting. Any questions that did not get answered, please, if nothing else, email Constance, email the coach, whoever, and they can send it on to me, and I am happy to try to answer them back as quickly as I can. And so thank you all for listening, and I think that's it.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.